Officials confirm the attack was coordinated. We are seeing unprecedented levels of terror alert across the nation. The suspect remains at large following the explosion.
It's a lie. Not a misunderstanding. Not an honest error of history. A deliberate, documented, traceable lie. Manufactured with purpose, spread with intent, and maintained for reasons that have nothing to do with truth. You have heard it thousands of times, from politicians, from textbooks, from news networks on every continent. The claim that Islam is an inherently violent religion. The historical record says the opposite. As Islam spread from Arabia across 3 continents in the 7th and 8th centuries, the populations it reached overwhelmingly retained their religions, their property, and their legal systems. That is not a Muslim argument. That is the documented conclusion of Western historians, and it has never been seriously challenged. By the end of this video, you will know who built this lie, when, and exactly what they needed the world to believe. Let's begin. This claim has 3 layers. The first is what the world has been told, for decades, by governments, journalists, and textbooks. The second is what the evidence actually shows. The third is the gap between them, and the question of how that gap got there. 3 questions, 3 answers, all of them documented. First, what the historical record of Islam's actual spread shows. Second, when and how the counter-narrative was built. And third, the names and the institutions behind it. We will name them. There is an essay, one essay, that formalized this lie for Western governments and gave it academic cover. It wasn't written after September 11th. It wasn't written in response to a crisis. It was written in 1990, 11 years before the attacks that would make it famous. The date on its cover will tell you everything. The claim we are examining is not a minor mischaracterization. It has shaped immigration law, justified military campaigns, and determined the lived experience of nearly 2 billion people. A claim this powerful, if wrong, does not survive by accident. Something is keeping it alive. We begin at the original record, not in 2001, not in 1993. We go back to the 7th and 8th centuries, when Islam was spreading across Arabia, Persia, North Africa, and beyond, and the historical account of what happened was still being written without a political conclusion already decided. The academic term is zimmi. It refers to the legal status of non-Muslim populations living under Islamic governance in the 7th and 8th centuries. Under this system, and it was a system codified in law, not an informal exception, non-Muslims retained their religions, their property, and their own courts. They paid a tax called the jizya. In exchange, they received legal protection and the right to govern their own communities. This was documented by British historian Thomas Arnold in 1896 and confirmed by Marshall Hodgson in a 3-volume academic history in 1974. Neither man was Muslim. Both men reached the same conclusion. The Coptic Christians of Egypt are among the oldest Christian communities in the world. They continued under Islamic governance. They exist today. The Jewish academies of Babylon, in modern Iraq, continued their scholarship for centuries under Abbasid rule. And then there is Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim-majority nation, where Islam arrived not through military conquest, but through Arab and Indian traders in the 13th century. No armies crossed the sea to Indonesia. The faith came through trade. The most common objection here is a fair one. The early Islamic State did expand militarily. The campaigns happened across Persia, North Africa, and into Spain. Armies existed. The historical record confirms it. Military expansion and religious coercion are not the same thing. Every empire in antiquity expanded militarily. Rome, Persia, Byzantium, the Mongols. The question is, what happened to the populations after the armies passed? The Spanish Inquisition of 1478 forcibly converted and expelled entire populations. Christian colonial governments across Africa, Asia, and the Americas imposed religion by compulsion. The comparative record exists. It has been studied, and it does not favor the claim that Islam spread by violence. 1.8 billion people. That is the number of human beings whose identity, in the eyes of governments, newsrooms, and airport security lines, has been shaped by this narrative. Not by anything they did, not by anything they believe, but by a story someone else built and decided to keep. The building of that story has a starting point. From the 18th century onward, European colonial powers needed an intellectual framework to justify the occupation of Muslim lands in North Africa, the Middle East, and across Asia. A body of scholarship emerged that positioned Islam as irrational, backward, and prone to violence. The academic term for this project is Orientalism. Edward Said documented it in a landmark 1978 work by that name. His conclusion? This was not neutral scholarship. It was a political architecture. That architecture was refined in the 20th century. An essay was published by a British-American historian whose name you will recognize before this video ends, that formalized Islam as a civilization in fundamental, inevitable conflict with the West. 3 years after that essay appeared, Samuel Huntington extended the same framework in a 1993 Foreign Affairs article, The Clash of Civilizations. Neither argument was accepted by mainstream historians. Both were adopted by governments. If you've ever been asked to justify your faith by someone who had already decided what it means, if you've ever searched for the words to explain that what you believe and what they're describing are not the same thing, this is where that gap comes from. It wasn't an accident. It was designed, over centuries, and then, in the decade before 2001, rebuilt with new institutional power. That machinery was running before September 11th arrived. What 2001 provided was not the narrative. It was permission and institutional backing to run it at full scale. After September 11th, 2001, the vocabulary already assembled, Islamic terrorism, radical Islam, Muslim rage, moved from academic journals into policy documents, press briefings, and primetime broadcasts within months. Media researchers have tracked the surge. The phrases entered the discourse at scale, from the same institutional sources, in the same compressed window of time. It was not spontaneous grief. It was organized amplification of a framework that had been waiting for precisely this moment. In 1990, 11 years before the September 11th attacks, a British-American historian named Bernard Lewis published an essay in The Atlantic. The title, The Roots of Muslim Rage. It was the first widely circulated argument positioning Islam as a civilization in inevitable, fundamental conflict with the West. It gave governments a vocabulary. It gave newsrooms a framework. And it was written more than a decade before the event that industrialized both. 4 years after Lewis, in 1997, the Runnymede Trust in the United Kingdom published a formal report documenting systematic anti-Muslim bias already embedded in Western institutions. They gave it a name, Islamophobia. The bias was already documented. The machinery was already running. 2001 did not create the lie. It industrialized it. This is the lie's anatomy. An intellectual framework built in the 18th century, refined and academized in the 20th, industrialized after 2001. And at every stage, every single stage, the historical record that contradicted it was available. It was never absent. It was just inconvenient to specific people with specific interests in specific decades. The evidence in this video does not claim that Islam has never been used to justify violence by individuals or groups who claim to act in its name. It claims something more specific. The idea that violence is Islam's nature, not a political choice made by individuals, but the religion's defining character, is not supported by the historical record. That is a manufactured identity. And it was manufactured for reasons that have nothing to do with Islam. If you came to this video skeptical of Islam, consider what you've just been given, not by Muslim scholars arguing a case, but by Western historians with no stake in the outcome, whose findings have been peer-reviewed, cross-referenced, and left unchallenged. Thomas Arnold in 1896, Marshall Hodgson in 1974, Edward Said in 1978, Bernard Lewis's own sources turning against his conclusions, The Runnymede Trust in 1997. That is not a faith claim. That is a documented record. And if you came as a Muslim who has spent years explaining themselves to a world that had already decided what you were, the weight of that experience has a source. You have just watched part of that source being named. That doesn't make it smaller, but it makes it legible. And what is legible can be answered. The world's most widely practiced religion does not belong to its caricature. And the people who built that caricature are now, finally, part of the historical record themselves. This lie is not unassailable. It has a history, a timeline, and a set of named architects. And anything with a history can be investigated and corrected. Next, we go deeper into one of the most specific claims within this narrative, that Islam spread by the sword. We'll follow the evidence so precisely that by the end, you'll know not just that the claim is wrong, but the exact century it was invented and why it was never retracted. If that kind of evidence-based investigation is what you're looking for, Islam Unscripted is where you'll find it.